Welcome everyone to 30 Minute Theology. I am Olu Shako, and 30 Minute Theology is where we get together, dive into God's Word, and look for some practical principles to apply to our daily lives. This will be the first installment of a series entitled Chain Reaction, and this builds off of our last lesson covering Judges chapter 19, which was the last installment of My Truth, speaking about how people, when they're following their own truth, when they're following their own way, uh, the things that come about from that generally are not good. This builds on that, looking at the situation where the Levite, he was being attacked by the men of Gibeah, his own men, a city that he went to specifically for refuge, not going to a foreign city, but going amongst his own people while he was traveling back home. Uh, they decided to do some dastardly things, and this is the chain reaction that comes from that specific incident. Let's begin. So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as the land of Gilead, and the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Then the children of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this wicked deed happen?" So we're getting ready to go into the place where the Levite shares the deed, the occasion, the trauma, and the tragedy that he had to endure in the land of Gibeah at the hands of the Benjamites. The people got together and united in God's presence, which is good. If you're going to get together to do something, it's good to be in the presence of God when you're doing that. They did so at Mizpah, which means watchtower or lookout, which a watchtower is a place where someone would stand and look to see, who's coming or what's coming towards their city so that they can take the proper steps in order to protect the city. In this case, all the people of Israel gathered together to look out to see what was coming against them as a nation and take the steps needed to protect it. If Mizpah sounds familiar, we spoke about Mizpah in the study series entitled "What Did You Say?" And it was in the second part where we covered chapter 11 of Judges with Jephthah. He lived in Mizpah in Gilead. This is Mizpah in Benjamin, though. So it's like Springfield. There's a Springfield in nearly every state of the nation. You got Springfield, Missouri, Springfield, Illinois, Springfield, Massachusetts, and likewise Mizpah. There were different cities with that same name. These people came together to fight, which is why I say, hey, it's 400,000 men who draw the sword. Some actions and some of the things that we endure require a forceful and even a violent response. If someone is attacking your child or your loved one, you don't just stand back and try to reason with them. No, you go in and you forcefully cause them to stop doing those things. Again, sometimes the actions that we have to take uh, are not necessarily the ones we want to, but are necessary to ensure that we can have peace. So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "My concubine and I went into Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now. So the Levite sent out a piece of his concubine, a piece of his second wife, to all of the tribes of Israel, all 12, because of what took place. So not only did Benjamin know that they were gathered together there within their territory at um, Mizpah, but they also knew the atrocities that the Levite had to endure at the hands of their people in Gibeah. Now, Judges chapter 19, verse 22, which we covered last week in the final installment of our My Truth series, which deals with what happens when people do whatever they feel is right, which is what the men of Gibeah did. They felt it was right to uh, initially they came to rape the man, but instead, because he threw his concubine out there, which was cowardly. Now, granted, he thought he was going to die. So it makes sense, or I should say, you may understand a bit better why he would take that action. It still does not excuse the fact that it was cowardly. If someone was going to die, if someone was going to have those kinds of, as they stated, lewd and outrageous things happen to them, it's supposed to be the man. You don't throw your wife out there. And we have to remember this was a young girl, anywhere between like 12 and 16 years old. Absolutely atrocious what the men of Gibeah wanted to do, even as atrocious the actions that the Levite took. These men were gathered together in the presence of God, as stated with the scriptures we read earlier, but they're looking to each other for answers. If you're in the presence of God, seek Him. Don't seek other people. And let that be the first thing that you do, is look to God for direction. We can come up with a whole bunch of stuff that sounds real good, but in practicality and when you do it, it doesn't work out well. So the first person that we should seek when we're looking to make a decision is God, especially if you're there in His presence. It just makes sense. So all the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. We will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, 1,000 out of every 10,000, to make provisions for the people. Then that when they come to Gibeah in Benjamin, that when they come to Gibeah in Benjamin, they may repay all the vileness that they have done in Israel. So the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united as one man. Really reminds me, the men being and everyone being united reminds me of when the nations gathered together in Babel to erect the tower. Uh, the Lord said that nothing they set out to do would be impossible for them. And it was because of the united front that they put forward. So it's good that you make a plan, which they did. They said, we're going to take 1/10 of the people to make the provisions for us, and then the rest of the people will go forward to fight. They were united, and whether you're united to do good or evil, having unity gives a level of agency that you would not have trying to do it yourself. Let's continue. Then the tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Now, therefore, deliver up the perverted men who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered together from their cities to Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. Let's pause here for a minute. What Israel did made sense. Like, they didn't necessarily want to go and have a war against their fellow brethren. They didn't want civil war. So they did what was logical. They went to the leaders of that tribe and said, hey, it's some people there that have done some wicked things. Yeah, I'm sure you got the same letter that we did. So you know what's going on. Give those people to us so that we can purge this evil from our nation. Yes, it is in a specific city. And yes, that is within a specific tribe's allotment. So, for all intents and purposes, within a specific state. However, because of this wickedness, because of how gross this act was, it impacts the whole, which that goes back to something that I talked about a couple lessons ago, how when we sin, it's not in a vacuum. It's not just involving that person or those persons. It impacts so much more. And they know, as being a nation who is called by God, that if there is sin within the people, that the Lord can and will punish everyone for that sin because they didn't do anything to take care of it. Israel was ready, and Judah specifically was ready to give up, and did give up Samson to the Philistines when they asked for him. But Benjamin would not do the same thing with these people. They stood by them even though they were wrong. Reminds me of, or I should say, puts me in mind of people that you'll see online, or out somewhere with, t-shirts, free whoever, fill in the blank, free this person, free that person, when they know so well that that person is guilty. That person needs to be in jail because of the things that they're doing. Why are you asking them to free them? Like, that's dumb. You free them because you love them. Okay, you can love somebody, they still can be wrong, and because they're wrong, they still need to pay the penalty for what they've done. That's silly. Free them to do what? So they can come out and do it all over again? No, their blind loyalty to wicked people is evil, and it's foolish. And likewise, when we, just stand beside somebody, like, they wrong, but that's my cousin, that's my brother, that's my mama. If they're wrong, don't stand with them, because that makes you wrong, and it makes you foolish, and it incurs a greater wrath upon you, because you willingly are standing in league with and behind someone is wrong. They're wrong. And from their cities at the time, the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 select men. All of this people were 700 select men, or I should say, among all this people were 700 select men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair's breadth and not miss. Now, besides Benjamin, the men of Israel numbered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. So if you are familiar with the gospel duo BB and CC Winans, BB's name is Benjamin. And right now, the prime minister of Israel is Benjamin Netanyahu, who they also call BB. So that's a nickname for the people, for anyone who's named Benjamin. And the nation of Benjamin, BB, they were with it. They had some troops, and some elite troops, as it stated. Left-handed, which gives them an advantage because most people are right-handed, so you're not expecting the angles to come the way that they do. And angles are important when you're engaging in combat. Not only that, they were lethal with the slingshot. And, they didn't have guns like we do today, but even today with having guns, if your aim is off, it doesn't really matter that you're shooting or what you're shooting. Where with these elite troops who lived in Gibeah, these trained soldiers, they were a formidable force. Now the Levite again was concerned that he would be killed, seeing as these 700 elite troops were in Gibeah. It makes that statement and that thought more rational, more reasonable. It also speaks to the people that were there, likely going after and who committed this atrocity, those that were going after the Levite. That number of 400,000 did not include Benjamin. They were separate, and they chose to separate themselves to stand with wicked men. Let's continue. Then the children of Israel arose and went up to the house of God to inquire of God. They said, which of us shall go first to battle against the children of Benjamin? The Lord said, Judah first. So the children of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel put themselves in battle array to fight against them at Gibeah. So they strategized, and they were in formation to go out and fight against Gibeah. Then the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah, and on that day cut down to the ground 22,000 men of the Israelites. Again, these were men of war. These weren't new troops that were just getting their feet wet. These men who drew their swords had been out to war before. They knew how to handle themselves, and they knew what it took to come home after going to war. But their people, Benjamin, slew about as many, almost one for one, of the number of troops that they had versus Israel as a whole. What's interesting to me here also is that we see Israel seeking God. They said they were going to cast lots before, but they're seeking God for direction. And what direction does God give them? Send Judah, Judah first, which you hear often in Christian circles is, send the praise first. You gotta go forth with praise, first, and not that that's unfounded, because Judah does mean praise, and it is important that you praise God in everything. The word says, in everything give thanks. This is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning us. However, in this specific one, the Lord said, send Judah first. And what happens? Over 20,000 people die, mass casualties. So know that God's direction may not produce immediate victory in your life. Just because God has told you to do something, it doesn't mean that you won't experience hardships. It doesn't mean that you won't be hurt or maimed or wounded. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that he has a plan. And if you stick to his plan, then you will see him move on your behalf. And the people, that is, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and again formed the battle line at the place where they had put themselves in array the first day. So they went back to the same spot, got in formation again to go to battle. Then the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I again draw near for battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against them. So the children of Israel approached the children of Benjamin on the second day, and Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah on the second day and cut down to the ground 18,000 more of the children of Israel, All these drew the sword. So they sought God again. This time, their prayer is more specific, but that doesn't mean that they still did not suffer mass and great casualties. Again, these were good men, good fighting men, men who knew what they were doing, but they fell at the hands of Benjamin. As you can see, Bethel, which is pinned in this image, is the place where they strategized and they gathered before going out. Previously, they were at Mizpah, but then they went to Bethel to seek the Lord before going out. Bethel was also within the land of Benjamin, as you can see Mizpah here, as well as Ramah and Gibeah, which were the places. Well, Ramah wasn't, but it was mentioned as one of the landing spots that the Levite would stay the night as he was traveling through. He wasn't going to stay in Jebus, which you see is at the bottom of the map, but instead stayed in Gibeah, where there were Israelites because there weren't any in Jebus. Unfortunately for them, there was still pain in following God's plan. Again, just because God tells you to do something, it doesn't mean that there won't be pain and suffering that comes along with it. I'm reading currently through the Bible this year, and I'm in the Gospels. My family and I were reading through, and we're in the Gospels right now. And something that struck me really not strange, but it just stood out to me was the scripture that says, if we're going to follow Christ, we must take up our cross, which means to follow the Lord, you're going to suffer pain. You're going to endure trials. You're going to have to go through horrible situations. That's a part of serving God. This myth that you serve God and that everything is peaches and cream and you live on a bed of roses is a lie from the pit. If you're serving God, you're going to go through. Granted, you're going to go through whether you serve him or not. So better to go through for good than to go through on your own. And that's really the blessing of serving the Lord. Yes, you do have a burden, but his burden is easy and his yoke is lighter than the yoke and the burden and the bondage of sin. Then all the children of Israel, that is, all the people, went up and came to the house of God and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. So the children of Israel inquired of the Lord. The ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. Now they get it, being the children of Israel. First, they were just in his presence and they were putting some things together and said, okay, which one should go first versus saying, Lord, should we go? Which they asked the second time, but now they're coming with fasting and praying. They're giving offerings. That they're seeking God in a desperate and a diligent way. This is what should have happened in the beginning. And this very well may be the reason why there was such great loss, is because though they sought God, they weren't seeking him with their whole heart. Oh, it is so important that we follow God with our whole heart, that we come to him in prayer and seek him the way that he says that we should seek him. This was a major undertaking for them. Were they fasting before? No. Were they giving offerings before? No. It wasn't until they had suffered loss after loss that they humbled themselves and came the way that they knew to come, came with the desperation versus just believing, since this is a righteous thing that we're doing, and we're in the presence of God, that God, is with us. He even told us which ones to send first. But if our attitude is not right, if we're not doing things the way that God says, we can suffer a lot as well, even though He may be telling us to go and do the thing. If we don't do it according to His direction, and we don't get the clarity that we need to from God, then yeah, we can suffer great things. Some things we may not be able to come back from. But know that with God, all things are possible. So even though they went through these things, even though they lost, nearly 40,000, or maybe a little bit over 40,000 people, that God still was going to help them. And this time, because they came right, Eleazar the priest had to be there, or I should say, Phineas has to be there before. Why not go to him, before? Why not, really seek God? Anyway, sometimes we have to go through these painful things for us to realize how much we need God in all of the things that we're doing, whether they be righteous or things that we believe to be right. We need to seek God. And when He gives us direction, if there's any question about it, keep going back to Him to get the clarity that you need before you move forward, so that you know that you're moving in His will. One thing that was really good about this, and is encouraging, is that unlike their ancestors, who, when something went wrong in the wilderness, they were ready to tuck tail and run back to Egypt. Oh, at least we had onions in Egypt to eat. It was just crazy. They're being fed miraculously every day by God, and you're longing for some onions that go along with being driven to death by your slave masters. But that's how we act, and how the enemy can mess up our minds, causing us to think that slavery and bondage is better than being free. Again, unlike their ancestors who were ready to go back, they kept seeking God. They kept getting His direction. And that is very important, that we continue to seek God regardless of what's going on. Get His direction. All right, key points. Seek God in everything, which I just got done talking about at great length, so we won't belabor that point anymore. God's direction does not always produce immediate victory. So don't be discouraged if God tells you to do something, and as you go to do it, you encounter difficulties, and you encounter roadblocks, and you encounter opposition. Expect that. The enemy doesn't want to see God's plan come to pass. So he's going to do everything he can to stop it. So know that those things are coming, and don't be discouraged when they do. Following God does not exempt us from hardship or loss. Don't believe the lie that just believing in God and then your life will be magically delicious like some Lucky Charms. No, it will not. Believing in Him will bring about success, and it will be good for you and good to you. And there will be a time where you don't have hardships and you no longer suffer loss. But that only happens when He's come back and we're in the new heaven and the new earth. Until then, expect trouble. Be specific. Ask clarifying questions. If God is giving you a word, it's like, oh, okay, I hear Him, but you're not really sure about it, go back and get clarity. It pays to do that because it keeps you from going the wrong way. All right, that's it for part 1 of Chain Reaction. We will pick back up with part 2 on next week, where we'll close out chapter 20 of the book of Judges. Until then, God bless and keep it together.